Welcome to the Candle Business Coach podcast. I'm your host, Kirsty Allen, and I am the Candle Business Coach. I'm also a mum of three and a kindness advocator. This podcast is all about making and selling candles, business development, and mindset, delivered to you with advice, inspiration, and motivation in a new episode every Friday. This episode is brought to you by the membership for candle makers, the Candle Makers Collective. Becoming a member gives you access to fortnightly online group Q&A coaching sessions to support you, monthly online workshops and trainings to help you grow your business, plus frequent expert guest speakers to inspire and teach you. You'll also have access to an ever-growing resource library with templates, guides, planners, and ebooks. But my favorite aspect of the membership is our exclusive Facebook group for accountability, connection, and support. So if you're looking to take your candle business to the next level and learn more about the membership for candle makers, click the link in the show notes for the Candle Makers Collective. Welcome back to the podcast, my friend. Today we have another candle maker conversation, this time with the beautiful Jackie from Cavendish Avenue. Now, for those of you playing along, you'll know that Jackie has been on the podcast before. This is our second episode together. Our first episode was released in May 2023. It was episode 61. So if you haven't listened to that one, I'd recommend pausing this one, going back, listen to 61, and then coming back to this one and then hearing our conversation 12 months later, because I think it's really fun to hear the conversation 12 months, like the conversation took place 12 months apart, but you can listen to it minutes apart. So that's always fun. But enough about that. Jackie, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself for those listeners that may not have heard your original episode with me?
Absolutely. And thanks for having me back on the podcast, Kirsty. I'm Jackie. I'm from Cavendish Avenue, essentially a candle business that I started back in 2021. So we're coming up this year to our 4th birthday, which is very exciting. We're essentially curators of cozy is how I like to say our mission. And so we've got a few signature scents and we hand pour them all in our studio in Sydney.
And I have to ask, what have you been up to in the last 12 months since we chatted? I know that your business has grown, which is amazing. You have personally grown, but share with us the journey. What have you been up to?
Looking back on the last 12 months, I kind of had some time to reflect, and I was thinking a lot about the fact that the theme of the year was investment. I think I invested a lot in my packaging. I invested in relationships with my stockists, in equipment, in education. So I had a really big year in terms of like looking at it strategically. You know, when I started the business, it was very much just a side hustle. And now that I can see it growing and, you know, my investment coming out good, essentially, it is really good time for me to actually start investing in some of those other things. So, for example, we've started our, just this month, workshops, candle making workshops with some of our stockists. So we've been able to kind of build on those relationships that we've been fostering for the last 2 or 3 years, and start to really engage the community in another way. And I think the week that I recorded with you last time, I had just started some candle markets. So I was doing a couple of those, but, you know, it's actually been so exciting to get into the workshops and have a more intimate kind of group to speak to over a longer period of time and kind of share a lot of things. And people have so many questions that you don't necessarily think to address in social media posts, or, you know, a lot of people were so interested in how fragrance actually works and how blending the fragrance works and, you know, going through the fragrance wheel. So that's been really, really fun. Yeah, that's been probably the biggest change to the business strategy, has kind of been trying to go into those other community focused branches.
Isn't it interesting that when we focus on community and connection, that's where A, brings us more joy, and B, results in growth for our business, as opposed to some candle makers purely want to sell online and they've realized quite quickly that it's a struggle. Yeah. Candles are a sensory item. They need to be experienced. They need to be held and smelled and enjoyed in person. So the fact that you cottoned onto that quite quickly anyway, doing the markets, the workshops, connecting with your community, sharing the mission and journey of Cavendish Avenue with the world, or at least your local community to start with, makes such a difference for your journey. And it's so much fun. And I've been seeing you on your socials, and I just know that you're in your element when you're at those workshops. And it's so nice to just spend just a nice intimate time with a group of people talking about and creating candles, which is something that you and I both adore. So it's so nice to see that that's paying off for you, but not just from a business perspective, but from a personal perspective as well. It's just an enjoyment that you're getting as being a business owner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know you guys speak a lot on this podcast about, you know, personal growth and self-growth. And I think that was definitely a leap. It's something that I've wanted to do for so long, kind of in-person workshops, but just, you get nervous to do it, or you start thinking, you've got imposter syndrome. What do I have to bring to the table or to charge people for something like this? But ultimately, working with a community, and I was very lucky to work with a stockist who's been very supportive of my journey as well, and kind of started in a very similar kind of full-time role as me and moved into her business. So it's been really great to kind of engage with that, and I'm looking forward to doing more over the next year.
Oh, it's incredible. Your journey and your growth trajectory have been inspiring, to say the least. And it's so amazing to see that when you are consistent in your business and you work continually on getting closer to your goals, all those amazing opportunities open up. And the connections that you have with stockists and with customers and even the audience that you have on social media, it makes you feel like, oh, wow, I've really got a community here. And then it makes such a difference to your own motivation levels when you do feel like you've got imposter syndrome, or if you do feel guilt or shame or anxiety or any of those emotions and feelings, you can focus on, I'm actually making an impact. I'm making a difference for my business and for others around me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was one of the main things that actually I wasn't expecting to come out of this, but the value that you get from obviously a financial benefit from doing the workshops. You've also got, B, relationships, and C, community. But something that I didn't really realize was all those intangible kind of value items. Like, you get more people exposed to your business, you get more people talking about it. You kind of can share that you are a thought leader in this kind of space. And so that really creates kind of longer lasting connection, particularly when people from the workshops then start following you on socials. It's not just that one touch point. They have all this background behind them. So yeah, it's been great to meet people, and everyone made so many friends. It was such a wonderful environment.
Oh, I love that. So it's the interwebbing of the connections that make such a difference. And you're the creator of that. If you hadn't stepped outside your comfort zone, pushed that imposter syndrome to the side and said, no, I'm going to do this, those people may not have ever met. And now they've got beautiful friendships, and you're a pivotal part in that, which is so beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So looking back on the past year, and I think I know what you're going to say, but what has been the most significant moment or milestone for your business?
Oh, it's hard. I think probably something very similar to that kind of community feel. I do think that's been maybe not the most, it has been the most strategically beneficial, I guess, but it's also, the most fulfilling part, and kind of does remind you why you're doing it, and the fact that there are people who really appreciate what's going on and what you're doing, and the kind of trajectory of your business and what the business stands for. And so it's really nice sometimes to have that validation in terms of in-person conversations, and it's just so fun to bounce ideas off people. It can be quite when the only other, I guess, touch point is social media or your website, and you're just relating on people on words, and you're not able to, scent is so sensory, as you were saying before, but it can also be really described really well as well. And it's not something that necessarily you can fit into a caption. It's all those beautiful elements that kind of come into scent because it's so layered, that it's just so wonderful to have all those connections and conversations, which has been really great. And I think that's kind of built, word of mouth then starts building, and that's just another kind of tangent benefit that just comes from things like that. So yeah, that's definitely been the biggest change in how I've kind of been dealing with the business and what sort of things I've been doing, and also one of the most strategically beneficial.
Which is very important, because we're not running charities, we're running business. So we want to make sure we're earning an income, making profit, and being able to reinvest in the business or spend our profit on ourselves, maybe some self-care or something like that. On the flip side, what sort of challenges have you had over the past year? Like, were the workshops a challenge in setting up? I know that there are a few candle makers that I speak to that are keen to start workshops. So would you say that there'd be challenges in those elements, or has there been other challenges for you?
I think to touch on the workshops, I didn't find the workshops too big a challenge, because I think, as I said, I had a relationship with my stockist, which meant that we were working together on it. I found actually markets probably a little bit harder. Trying to set those up by yourself is a bit daunting. And so I've not done as many, as much as they are really beneficial as well. For anyone wanting to start a workshop, though, I do think if I didn't have a stockist who was willing to share their venue with me, I do think it would be quite a difficult thing to get off the ground, just because venues are so expensive. And, for an hour or an hour and a half workshop, you can't be charging an extortionate amount of money to make sure people are still getting value from that. So I definitely think if someone were to be starting a workshop, I do think it would be beneficial to, build relationships first, find a community, and then kind of go from there. But I think personally, my biggest challenge this year has probably been a bit of a mindset shift and kind of working through that. I think it's very easy in this world of social media, and it probably sounds a little bit vapid, but ultimately, comparing your brand to, I guess, cool girl brands on Instagram or things with such beautiful aesthetic that does fit into, I guess, the zeitgeist at the moment. And I do think ultimately you've got to come back, and this is what I've been working on the last 6 months, come back to what the core of the business is. And ultimately, Cavendish Avenue is a curator of cozy. We want to create this kind of softer world for people to retreat to, where the antidote to the hustle. It's completely in a different realm to brands that are capitalizing on, Instagram trends and Pinterest aesthetics and things like that look so beautiful, and I love all of them. But my brand does sit in a different kind of realm, and I think I've spent a lot of time this year, through new branding, working with a small business to get new packaging for our stockers to make sure that reflects everything, having the brand story written out, changing the website around, all the aesthetic on our Instagram page, and just the kind of language that we use and the kind of strategic decisions that we make and the people who we partner with, I think have all kind of, even, our charity partner, we've changed in the last 12 months to be Black Dog Institute, because I think we spoke about it last time, but, the mental health aspect and, creating your cozy can also, it's a very big part of self-care. And then we've also got, as a tangent to that, two of our flagship scents, which are London Fog and Notting Hill, both have essential oils, which have been, scientifically proven to change the alpha waves in your brain and help you sleep and lower your cortisol levels. And so all of those things have kind of culminated, and I do think it's starting to pay off really well. We're connecting because we're being really authentic to the brand. We're able to connect with people who feel very much the same and want to connect with something like that, maybe want something a bit more daydreamy and wholesome. And yeah, it's just started to really pay off in terms of the amount of stockists that we can get and the word of mouth that we've got through our customers and people engaging with our content. So that was probably the first half of the last 12 months was, a bit of a, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Do we fit in this world? And then, coming back to our own towards the end of the month.
One of the things I love about your social media is that it's the calm amongst the noise. And I don't often scroll, which I know is like the opposite of many people, when I do indulge in a scroll, and I come across your content, it's like a breath of fresh air. Like it actually makes you stop and think, oh, what has Jackie written here and what's going on with the business? And let me know, like, tell me the story about the scent of the day or the scent that you're promoting at that time. And it's very calm and relaxing. And that takes, that is strategic, yes, but it has to be authentic as well. And it's just one of the things about your brand that I love is that it's just so aesthetically pleasing, but it's just calming and beautiful. And it's very, very much about being cozy and spending time with the people that you love and taking care of yourself and just enjoying the small things in life, those little moments that make up our existence. And you've refined that over the past 12 months. It was already beautiful 12 months ago, but it's getting better and better. And I am so excited to see where it's going to take you in the future and just how much of an impact you're going to have on your community and the greater candle world as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
So as we could imagine, we evolve over time. Had another 12 months of candle making experience.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've mastered candle making, or do you still feel like there's growth ahead?
I think I've tried a few new things in the last 12 months. Like I've got new equipment. 12 months ago, I was doing the double boiler method and doing wax on these tiny little stainless steel jugs. And now I've got a proper wax melter. So that's really increased efficiency, which has been wonderful. I've had a few, as you get new equipment, you need to play around with it. I didn't realize that it stays hot for a lot longer than expected, than the double boiler method does. And so I had quite a few candle fails when I was just trying out that equipment. But it's ultimately, it's made such a difference in terms of how many candles I can make and the efficiency and all of that sort of thing. And I've also I think I've started to get a lot better with blending fragrance. The last year, I've delved into a lot of, the fragrance wheel and trying to understand, kindred scents compared to contrasting scents. And I kind of wanting to culminate in, I wanted to be a thought leader and candle maker, and I want to understand everything in terms of the education part. But B, it's kind of allowed us to create, I guess, more mature scents. So, for example, we've just released, and I've only released in the last 12 months, one scent, and the others, I did release 2 temporary limited edition summer scents. But the one that's sticking around is our On Wharf scent, and it's kind of an ode to a feminine Sydney, and it is our most mature and most layered scent. And that was only possible because I understood, how fragrance works in terms of the entire fragrance kind of profile, and working through that. So yeah, it's a work in progress. I'm hoping to kind of draw from all that kind of education and learning, to kind of go forward and continue to just be very intentional with what we release and what we create and how we kind of test that and work through those.
I feel like the way that you run your business is very much the face of the business as well. And what I mean by that is, I mentioned before how your business is cozy and relaxing. And I feel like that's a reflection of you and what you want to bring to your brand.
Yeah, definitely.
You could imagine that if someone was excited about, or even if when you're excited about a release of a scent and you've discovered this new fragrance or you've blended a new fragrance and you want to release that as a product, there's this temptation to do everything really quickly. But with you and your brand, it's very much, let's just slow down. Let's think about it before we act. Let's be intentional and let's be authentic and genuine. And that's just so beautiful that you didn't say, oh no, I've mastered candles, I know what I'm doing now. because even if you've been doing it for a decade or even more, there's always so much to learn. You're still going to have fails every now and then. There's so many variables in candle making. We can't predict how everything's going to turn out. But you refine it and you make it the safest and the most best performing that you can. And the fact that you're educating yourself on fragrances specifically, as well as the candle making process in general, is so important, because so many candle makers I speak to will just throw different fragrances together and hope for the best. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But unless you have an understanding about the actual, like the chemical side and the fragrance notes and the flash points and all the things, you might get a fail just based on how you've blended, rather than it's an actual like fail in general of the candle. It could be just the fragrance. So I love that you're evolving with your craftsmanship along the way.
Yeah, definitely. And that was actually, surprisingly, I wasn't expecting it to be, but the thing that on both candle making workshops that we've done in May, they were the questions that came up the most. What's a top note? What's a heart note? How do you blend these and why are they like that? And what's the kind of science behind it? And so I was glad that I had that kind of backing to be able to walk people through it and create fragrances for them as well that would have longevity and levity. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. And I can imagine if you hadn't done that education and you're getting those sorts of questions at a workshop, it would have been very scary to be like, oh, I actually don't know the answer. Oh, I'm the candle maker and I don't understand fragrance.
Absolutely.
That'd be a huge gap in your knowledge, but you prepared yourself for that. And now you've got all this knowledge that you can now apply in your business as well as in the workshops to create custom scents for the people that come in to the workshop and can experience what you, the candle maker, and you, the business owner, can offer.
Absolutely, yeah.
How has the response been from your customers as you've grown? Have you found that you've had like memorable feedback or stories as you've grown along the way?
Yes, I do feel though that the last 12 months I've focused a lot on my relationships with my stockists. And so we've been pushing, I guess my efforts have been pushing a lot less on my social media or, person to person, though I still absolutely love when people reach out. And, just last month we had one she had bought previously. I kind of recognize the name. Sometimes I recognize people's names when the orders come through. And she had bought last year or earlier this year, potentially, a stroopwafel and tulips candle. And, I hadn't heard anything from her for 4 or 5 months. And then all of a sudden she bought herself one and then one for a friend and one for another friend. And I could just see her name on the, and then the ship to was to different people. And so I just love that you obviously know that these sort of things, especially with candles, when they do last so long, you have these kind of delayed gratification in terms of some customer journeys. And, it was very fulfilling and very satisfying to know that they obviously really enjoyed the candle fragrance, and were able to share that with friends. And, that's just spiraled and that becomes word of mouth. And I love that. And, I've had quite a few stockists say, these candles have, completely sold out and the customers are loving them. And I absolutely love to hear that feedback, because from the stockist perspective, people come into their store to actually smell the candles. Yeah. And so I love getting that kind of immediate feedback from people about what scents people love and what, maybe doesn't sell as well and doesn't land. I've got one stockist in the Hunter Valley, and so she just loves anything with Prosecco or a wine scent, that sells really, really well there for the, I guess, not tokenistic, but, it's just something really fun in that kind of area. And so you just know, it's just fun to see where fragrance lands and where people like to have kind of share those stories.
Absolutely. And you won't know what's going to work where and with who unless you try different things. It's so important as candle makers and business owners to step outside your comfort zone, try different things and see what works. If it doesn't, you pivot, you try something new. Many stories I hear is that they try one thing, like one thing is tried, it doesn't quite work. And so that's like a hard stop. It's like, no, it's not. It's just a temporary roadblock. You can step over that or move around it. But it's having the maturity, the perspective, the growth personally and in your business to know that you're not going to know exactly how your brand's going to be received, what fragrances will be most popular, depending on the location of the stockist as well. If you go down the wholesale path, if you go to markets, that will just bring a whole nother range of customers to you, but then you'll get the feedback of what's actually working and what you can improve on. And so there's so many ways to grow your business, but I love how strategic you're being.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to, say, like something like collaborations and partnerships, obviously you've got good relationships with your stockists. Have you thought about or have you done any collaborations with other complementary brands?
I've not, but I've certainly looking to reach out. I think I love the idea of custom candles. Oh, to be fair, I've done one custom candle for that stockist in the Hunter Valley who specifically wanted a red wine fragrance. So I was able to do that, and she's the only one that sells those fragrances. But in terms of collaboration, I would absolutely love to work with, a bakery or a florist or something like that to really bring their creations to life as well. But to date, no. That's not happened, and I've not been doing that. But I do want to, that is something that I definitely want to put some effort into this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to know that it's really good to have multiple goals and different types of goals, but also to know that not everything is going to happen at the same time. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not being consistent in your business or that your business isn't going to succeed. It's just, what's the priority now? What can I work on to grow my business in the direction that I prioritize? And then look forward to bringing in other elements as time goes on. And that's really exciting. That means that you could have different parts of the business growing at different times and reaching different customers and making a different impact along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And, something like workshops was something I never thought I'd actually end up doing. So that was one avenue that just wasn't, on the radar. And so there's going to be so many different things that just pop up. And I think, as you're saying, if you're working on a very authentic trajectory, opportunities will start to pop up, and, you just got to be in a position to be able to take them. So definitely looking out for those.
And I think it's really important to have your radar open, on, up, whatever the saying is, to allow you to be able to see those opportunities when they come up. And if you're doing the background work, like the education and reaching out and fostering those relationships with your stockists, those opportunities will come up more often, more consistently, and they'll be more fruitful for your business growth.
Absolutely. And you do want to only be taking things that are very genuine for your business and for your customer base. At the end of the day, it's very quick to lose trust and takes a long time to build. And so you want to make sure that everything you're doing is aligned with the business. And I think that's why it was kind of really good. It was a really good time for me, although it was a challenge, to spend the last 6 months really looking and thinking strategically about the business and our mission and our vision, and making sure that now I'm very clear on it. So it's very easy to align all opportunities kind of in line with that.
And say no when appropriate as well.
Absolutely.
Yep. Speaking of saying no, what's something that you've said no to?
I have recently actually said no to white labeling.
Okay.
It's, obviously it would be fruitful in terms of, I guess, financial gain to white label some fragrances. But at the end of the day, the amount of time and effort that I put into them, and the amount of time and effort that I would want to put into any custom fragrance that I was making for, anyone, I don't want it to be, I guess it is twofold. I don't want to take effort away from my own business and kind of growing this brand that I do want to put a lot of effort into. I do work full time. And so I want to make sure that any effort that any spare time that I do have is spent on Cavendish Avenue. And B, I don't want to create anything that's subpar. And I do think that ultimately someone who is looking to white label potentially just wants a whole lot of fragrances really quickly, done quickly, and just produced really, fast and efficiently. And unfortunately, that's not the way I work or want to work. I want to make sure that everything is quality, because at the end of the day, it's going to someone and someone's paying money for it. I'm not looking to white label anything at the minute. And, I completely understand, especially for fragrance suppliers. I know a lot of them do white labeling, and that makes so much sense for that business. But for my business itself, it's not really something that I want to go down.
There's a lot of power in knowing what your business and brand stand for. And when you know what you stand for, when opportunities come up, you know straight away whether it's the right fit or not. When I speak to candle makers that are at the early stages of their business, like they've just launched or they're planning to soon, they want everything. They want every opportunity. They want every sale. They want, because they're excited. And they want to share their business with the world. But what you're doing is really clever, because you're standing strong in, and that takes practice and it takes experience, and it takes, at least 12 months since the last time we had you on the podcast. It takes a lot of growth and a lot of personal strength to say no to opportunities. If you are strapped for cash and an opportunity comes up, you're more likely to say yes, even if it's not quite in alignment with the brand. But what you're doing is, again, being strategic, but being really intentional. And I know I keep using that word, intentional, being authentic and genuine, but I think that really does sum up your brand, and you're doing what feels right. And that will then build that trust amongst your customers and amongst your stockists as well.
Absolutely. And like you're saying, a lot of people who do start their businesses, there are some opportunities that come up that are really short term that might be great to dabble in, even if you're not sure if, it's the right fit, or, a short term partnership or collaboration or something like that. But for those longer term kind of commitments, you don't want to be going in without, I guess, a strategic compass kind of part, bringing you through.
Yeah. And that can be really hard if you're a novice at business, or if you've just started making candles and you think, oh, now I've got to market them to the world. Like, how are people meant to even find my brand if I'm not doing markets and I'm just on social media, I'm just having a website, or I'm just online? But if you take a step back and really focus on, what impact do I want to have with my brand? What do I stand for? I think that will hold you in good stead over the long term, rather than rushing into things, which again is the opposite of what your brand is about anyway. You're very much, let's just slow down and take our time. Are you ready for personalised support for your candle making journey? Hi there, my friend. I'm Kirsty Allen, the Candle Business Coach, and I help candle makers like you with mindset and business strategy, as well as troubleshooting your candle making struggles. With my private coaching, we'll work together to set and achieve your goals. And whether you need a single session for clarity or a series of sessions for ongoing support, I'm here to help you every step of the way. Check out the show notes for details of my private coaching sessions and packages, and let's achieve your goals one candle at a time. So personally, you touched on it before that you've had a big year of personal growth that coincides with the business. What has been the biggest insight that you've had, or realization?
The biggest realization, it does come up with that biggest challenge, that mindset shift and kind of stepping away from the comparison trap, really, is, it kind of allowed me to recognize that Cavendish Avenue is very much intertwined in my own personality and my own kind of, my own aesthetic and the things that I love to see and content that I love to create and consume. And I think that kind of allowed me to take that step and really dive into Cavendish Avenue and kind of create this omniverse that is very, very wholesome and very green and all those kind of things. Ultimately, you've got to shake off any insecurity about that, because if it is kind of, if you're happy with you and you're, then it shouldn't be such a big deal to kind of show that part of you to the world through this brand. And so that kind of gave me the confidence to really step into the brand and just be as authentic as possible, because ultimately, if that is, my inner self and, my personality that goes along with that, and I want to connect with people, then I need to be showing that out so that I can connect with like-minded people. You want to create those kind of intentional connections rather than relationships and customer base and all the rest of it without, there's no point in building a customer base for things that are just going to go like that, or something that's shallow or based on something that's not authentic, because you're not going to have that longevity. You're not going to be able to sustain it. And ultimately, you don't want to be in a position where you've built something and then can't keep up appearances. So that's been, a really important step in the last couple of months. Yeah.
It takes a lot of strength for knowing that you're worthy of sharing yourself with the world and that you are enough. It's not about putting on a different facade or putting on a facade and then sharing a brand that doesn't feel right to you. If you share your journey, you connect authentically with your community, that's where the magic is, because it's not just about having, thousands and thousands of followers on socials, even if you had, say, 50 followers that were engaged, purchased from you regularly, that would keep you very busy. Whereas there's this idea that I have to have lots and lots of followers, I have to have lots of likes and comments and DMs and all the things. But if you're focusing on what actually matters and what actually will grow your business, that's where you'll find you can be sustainable and have the longevity, like you said.
And you know what, at the end of the day, if you are kind of aligned with that, then things do start just coming in your way. You know, as I started pivoting like that, there was a stockist that I hadn't heard from for about 8 or 9 months, kind of, you know, had reached out a couple of times in the early days. And, you know, I just figured, okay, they're not interested anymore. And in the last month, actually this morning, I just sent them an order. They had reached out of the blue last week just to get another order. So I do think that people do recognize when you're being authentic and really trying to, and your brand is not something that's just there just because you can make money from it. Like at the end of the day, we want to make an impact, like you were saying. And I do want it to become, you know, this softer world. I do want this to be this antidote to the hustle and the grind. And I think that there are people who recognize and resonate with that. So
I recommend all the listeners to check out your website because it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
And it just gives you a little breath of fresh air, a little recharge, just having a little look around the descriptions and the sense that you offer and just the beautiful aesthetic. And I think it excites me to know that your journey is going to get even further and further ahead. So how do you feel about the future and where you're going?
I'm feeling good about the future. I'm feeling good about where I'm going. I don't see too many changes particularly. I think it's about, now that I've got that kind of foundation, it's about building on that and making sure that's as strong as can be. I think the one thing that I'm probably not the best at is I'm great at future. You know, I know what scent I'm going to release in spring this year. That will be our one scent for the year. I know, you know, our Christmas kind of specials, etc. I know what I want to do over the year. I'm great at kind of visualizing that and creating the scent descriptions and creating the scents. I'm not good at taking the time to actually set up photography for it and, you know, plan that marketing side of it. Even though I did a marketing degree. So I'm going to try and this year definitely try and plan that a few steps out. I think I get so caught up in the scent because it is the part of it that I love so much and I want to share with people and I want people to experience in their homes that I kind of not forget, but don't plan ahead enough for those other elements. So I definitely think this year is about making sure that all those decisions, all those product releases are in line with the business and strategic decisions, and it'll all come together. And I think this year is just about building that foundation and just, building that customer base based on that.
That's really clever. And I love how you are focused on the long term over short term gains. Like you're thinking you're thinking far ahead, you're able to visualize, you're able to be strategic, but you're still doing you're doing like you're hustling, hustling, sorry, wrong word. You're working consistently in your business because definitely. It means so much to you and the impact you want to have on the world and on the community is so important to you that bringing out a new scent or bringing out a new workshop or anything that's beneficial to the business, it doesn't just benefit you, it benefits so many people, and you are having such a beautiful impact in the candle community and in the general community as well. And I think when you focus on what's important to you and that shines through your brand, then as I said before, like it's just magic and it just brings in so many opportunities and allows you to grow even further and up-level your skills and up-level your personal growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, like you're saying, long-term kind of gain over short-term gain. And, you know, I've got a lot of people who do own their own businesses in my own life, and they kind of have really started talking about you need to start thinking in 5-year, 10-year plan rather than, you know what I mean, that short-term plan. And so if you do have, and you do know that you're working for 5 years, then you can spend this year just kind of building that foundation and making sure that the rest will just flow on. So it's definitely something I want to do this year. Just get really, really clear on our vision.
It almost takes the pressure off knowing that you don't have to do everything this month or this year or the next 3 months. Like you can really, again, just slow down, zoom out, plan everything out for the future in a more relaxed way, and then just break it down into tasks or break it down into deadlines and get what you need to get done and enjoy the process. And I think one thing that's so clear with you, Jackie, is that you're so passionate about your business and you love it so much.
Yeah.
And there's so much joy that it brings you because you know the impact you're having not only on your customers, but on the charity that you work with and the whole business in general.
Yeah, I do love the business. I do. I mean, going into your 4 years, you do need to kind of make that decision, is it a hobby and you're just going to kind of let it fizzle out, or do you really want to make something work? And so that's it. It's a pivot. We're going for it. So
yes. And we'll have to book in episode number 3 in another 12 months time, because people are like, yes, I've dominated the world with with my business.
Yeah. It's a plan.
I've made the world softer with my brand, and it's going to be beautiful to see the next 12 months of growth, because not everything needs to be put on socials. Not everything needs to be updated every day, but you're doing so much work behind the scenes. You're educating yourself on different aspects of candle making, especially fragrance. You're speaking with wholesalers, you're speaking with customers, you're speaking with stockists, you're doing all the things, and it doesn't have to all be on socials.
Yeah, absolutely.
That doesn't mean that your business isn't growing or that you're not being continually working on it as well.
Absolutely. And, they do say it's a highlight reel, and I completely agree. At the end of the day, you do want to be making an impact on your business, whether it's at an individual level or, with a wider community. And so those are the conversations that matter. And whatever you can share. But ultimately, you do need to be doing things for the right reasons, and, it'll all come back.
Always, always. Have you had much issues with, say, getting supplies or any impact in the economy the way it is at the moment in your business?
Yes, absolutely. One of my main suppliers, particularly for fragrance, they used to be very close to me. So I did not have to pay any shipping. I could just go, order in the morning. It would be ready for pickup in the afternoon. And so that was really good, because I don't love having a substantial amount of stock on hand in terms of, supplies, particularly fragrance oil. I can have as much waxes and vessels and all that sort of thing. But fragrance oils, I'm very particular with. I don't want a whole lot there. I want to make sure that they're, as far away from any light, and, they're in their warehouse for as long as possible. And so that did increase the costs when that warehouse, and it was because of economic downturn, that warehouse did have to move remotely. And so, that did definitely impact me. But I am lucky in that, something I've learnt from is don't rely on one supplier for everything. And so I've been lucky, over the last 3 years to have tried so many, and to have, I'm not restricted to just relying on one supplier. And so when possible, I have been able to kind of go through and just make amends as needed. But it definitely has increased costs. And I think in general, costs have increased across the board. And so I haven't increased any costs for our customers over the last 12 months, but, our stockists, our wholesale costs have gone up slightly just to make ends meet on that side, because ultimately, yes, I do love wholesale, and I love, being able to create really good, engagement with a whole community that, and kind of jumping off someone else's community that they've already started building. But you do also have to make sure that it's a good investment.
I'm curious, what are your thoughts on raising prices?
I've not had to do it yet on any candles. I do think you need to be transparent at the end of the day. I have had conversations with my stockists, for example, when I did have to raise the prices, and, I had to provide a hard date, and, it's not something like you can turn around to them and say, tomorrow I'm raising the price. I do think I did give them, I think I changed in the financial year so that they were able to kind of get those last orders at the lower price. And it wasn't a substantial cost increase. But I think if you were to increase costs, or if I were to increase costs on my e-commerce site, I do think you'd have to be quite transparent. I don't think it's something that, you owe it to your customers to kind of explain the reasoning. And I think that ultimately, if you've built that customer base that is really engaged, they understand the quality and the time and effort that goes into kind of creating those candles and creating the products. And so they're able to, if you're able to justify it, and, it's not just for financial gain, but really because COVID, a pandemic, a GFC, whatever's happened, I think you're engaging with, people who are very reasonable, obviously, and for the most part. And so, you're able definitely to, reason with people. And I think it would be a matter of just being very open and writing an open letter note, having your DMs open. And I think sometimes there are things that you can't, if the price of my vessels were to go up 100%, it's not something that I can sustain. You'd need to raise your prices. And I think, as long as you've also done your due diligence to kind of find alternatives and limit and mitigate that impact to your customers, I think at the end of the day, what can you do?
I love how you've encapsulated raising prices in such a beautiful way, but so important to be transparent and so important to be honest with your customers. Do it in a way that is honoring them and being respectful of your customers and your stockers.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Respect is, definitely there.
It's huge, yeah. Can you share with us your favorite story or experience from your business over the past year?
It's a good question. I think, to be honest, our limited edition summer scents we had 2 summer scents and they were both inspired by travels in July the year before, kind of European kind of vibe. And I think I ended up speaking to someone, one of our fragrances was Cornish Mist, which was based on an Earl Grey rose tea latte. And that was something that I'd had in Cornwall. It was kind of very cold, rainy day in the middle of July, as much summer, as you can imagine. And I ended up talking to the cafe owner there, and they were so sweet, and they'd been a business owner there for so long. It's all small business along those kind of cobblestone streets. And we just ended up talking, and he was talking about, he'd called it a Cornish Mist latte. And I said, is that like a London fog latte? Because I had my candles. We started talking about fragrance and this and that. And he was saying, yes, but, we don't like the big smoke down here. So we made it with rose instead of lavender. And so I was able to take that and also add sea salt to kind of really, I guess, herald the seaside location. And, it's just something that packs a whole lot of memories. And that's what I love about scent. And, you've got to be very cautious that your scents aren't just memories that you're layering your own memories on, but that they allow other people to also, I guess, smell it and create their own memories. And so I made sure that, the summer scents were all sea salt inspired. And so people were able to kind of have their own summer, summer 2023, this is the scent of the summer. And it was just beautiful to find people who really loved it. And to be honest, those fragrances have done so well that while I don't currently sell them anymore on my website because they were limited edition, I do stock them at all my stockists, and they're the most popular scents, which always happens, doesn't it? I said it was limited edition, so I can't bring it back, but yeah. So it is wonderful to see like how other people are kind of experiencing them, and people just love them. So it's just something that feels very personal to me that I'm now able to share, and hearing back all the feedback about it has been really special.
I love that. I just love how every fragrance that you offer, or every scent that you offer, every candle that you offer, it's steeped in memories in terms of creating memories for the person that's going to purchase that candle and burn it in their home or give it as a gift. But it also invokes memories of where the scents come from, holidays, family, like all sorts of things. It's so, as you say, so multi-layered and so beautiful. And I love that, you can just strike up a conversation with a cafe and just start telling about your business so easily and so passionately and yet so calmly as well. Many of the candle makers that I chat with, it's not that they're not proud of their business, it's that they're not able to share their business in a way that feels, I guess, pride is the only word that I'm thinking of, but they're not ashamed of their business. They're not the biggest advocate of their business as they could be and as they should be. And I don't use the word should lightly. I want candle makers to shout from the rooftops about their business and advocate and be proud of what they've created, and instead of playing it small, downplaying what the journey that they're on. And I feel like that's something that you do so well, is that you're like, I'm a candle maker. I have a business. This is my life. This is part of my journey. And it's important to me to talk about it as often as I can. Yeah, strategically, but more passionately as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, at the end of the day, that particular conversation was never meant to kind of create a product out of it, but it just has so happened that, his passion also about it, and just the setting, and, the kind of magic of just being in that location and having, I guess, it just felt kind of serendipitous that, I had a London fog fragrance already for the last 3 years, and he's talking about a kind of spin on that. And I thought that's brilliant to kind of bring that in. But I completely agree. I think it's very easy for small business owners, particularly if they're not doing their small business as their full-time job, to kind of feel a little bit of shame about it. And, it's just a hobby that, but at the end of the day, you've got to work through that and kind of just know why you're doing it. And if it is just because you enjoy it, then that is enough, really, and that is, you don't want any shame around it. And I think that's kind of part of what I was working through over the last year. My business is, evokes memories of, the countryside and flowers and the little moments in life. And, you know what, they are special enough to kind of herald in this way. And so you should shout it from the rooftops. I agree.
Absolutely. I feel like you've grown so much since our last conversation. And that comes with, time passing, us aging, getting older, all the things. But the way that you speak so fondly of your business is just so beautiful. And I love that there's so much, as I said before, there's so much growth ahead, but there's also so much appreciation and gratitude from where you've come from and what you've experienced so far. And to be almost at 4 years is just wild, because I remember last year we were like, we're almost at 3 years, and I was like, wow, that is so cool.
It's crazy.
It's so beautiful. And I know I keep saying that, but it's just I just love your brand so much. And I think what you've created and what you're creating, other candle makers can look to for inspiration, because there's just so much love and so much passion and so much beauty in your brand.
Definitely. And I think that kind of came also at a more general level from the pandemic and onwards. I started my business. Actually, I did start my business in the pandemic as well, but I've just found like so many ceramics businesses and so many there's just so many small businesses that are really kind of coming into their stride now. And there is so much inspiration out there. So it's so fun to connect and have that kind of community. It's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you remember our last episode, towards the end, I asked you 3 questions that I ask all my podcast guests. So I've already asked you those 3 questions, but what I think is really fun is to ask them again to see if your answers have changed. So the first question is, what is your favorite candle fragrance?
I actually don't think this one would have changed. My favorite candle fragrance is Regent's Park. I absolutely love it. I find it so nostalgic. It's a little bit of a melancholy soul. So I think, it's got the rainwater, and it's really it just reminds me of a dewy, dark kind of, walk through Regent's Park in London at dusk. And I just love it. And I think it's really uplifted with the lemon and elderflower, and they're just scents that really mean a lot to me. Anyone who knows me knows I'm an absolute elderflower fiend. So I think Regent's Park is definitely still my favorite. And I'm glad that it's, this year it's getting a bit more traction with the customer base. And I think people are really loving that kind of scent profile.
Number 2, what do you love about candles?
Oh, I love so much about candles, as I'm sure you do as well. What do I love about candles the most? I love that they can transport you somewhere. I love that they can change your mood. Currently got stroopwafel and tulips burning just because it always reminds me of this time of year. The changing of the seasons outside my window. There's, falling leaves from a tree. And I just think the fact that you can just really set the mood for the day with a different candle fragrance is really important.
And then the last question is, what is one piece of advice for new candle makers you'd like to give?
As we've spoken, something that I do think is probably the most important thing is to really have confidence in your brand and back yourself. I think ultimately you've got some sort of authenticity and genuineness towards and intentionality towards why you're making candles. And I do think that you need to run with it. You've obviously started it for a reason, and, your ideas are valid and your ideas will create something really beautiful, I'm sure. And so, have the confidence to back yourself, just go for it and see, try again. I think it's definitely important.
Amazing. Thank you, Jackie, so much for being on the podcast for the second time. I've loved our conversation today. I feel like there's just so many little gold nuggets throughout our episode that candle makers will be able to reflect on and perhaps journal on, as well as be inspired by. So for anyone that wants to get in touch with you, where can we find you online?
So our website is www.cavendishavenue.com.au, and our Instagram is @cavendish.ave. So you can find us there. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast again, Kirsty.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you, my friend, for listening to this episode. Check out the show notes for all the links mentioned throughout the conversation, and please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you're feeling inspired, I would love it if you would write a review for the podcast and give a 5-star rating. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful day.